Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Reddit. I too choose that one guy's dead wife. Now let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Musca's, serving the finest Chilean rum on the house tonight and every night at Musca's. Welcome everyone to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers. We like to analyze and discuss films from that perspective. As you know, people who work behind, in front of the camera, we do plenty of on-screen, off-screen acting. Off-screen to mean, more voiceover stuff. So I don't know, maybe the process of doing a podcast gave me a little more confidence in my voice. I still, because I'm forced to listen to it every week. I edit the show, and after a certain point, we all hate our own voices, and maybe you can talk a little bit more to that, but it's it just wears you down. Like it rubs that nerve ending off where you just, whatever, that's my voice. It sucks. I'm moving on. And yet we get paid, to also do voice acting. So it can't be all bad. Did that take a while for you to get used to your own voice?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really remember very much. Like I remember recording myself when I was 15, 14 and thinking, well, that's weird. I thought it was weird leading up to that because I'd heard my voice recorded before, but got to remember this is, the late 80s. It's not like I just had like recording devices laying around, like a phone. So I remember anytime I did hear my voice, I thought it was weird. But the moment I started singing, I think I just kind of got used to it. It was like, oh, I like doing this, so how I felt was I like doing this, so I just better get used to it. Because I'm going to do it a lot, And so I have never really had, I don't really remember having that kind of like, oh, I sound really weird kind of thing. I'm sure it happened when I was little, but I'm just used to it. I've just always been used to it. I think it was a decision to be okay with whatever it was.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I think there's also a relationship between how you perceive your own voice as well as how you perceive your own artistic voice. Because whenever you're putting yourself out there, that's another version of you're listening to your own voice, right? Whenever I make a film, or maybe when an artist, makes a painting, like you're now saying, this is done, this is out there. How do I feel about it? Like there's that, I don't know, like the Bible talks about, Jesus talks about, a prophet has no honor in his own town or something along those lines. Like maybe seeing yourself, seeing your own work, hearing your own voice, you don't appreciate or respect it as much. Like the best sandwich in the world is the one that you didn't have to make. And so, the ability to process your own work, your own voice, can maybe say a lot about your ability to have confidence and putting yourself out there. And maybe that's why I just hate everything I do. It's like I just don't have this bare bones level of self-esteem that maybe also helps me be better. Because it's really nice to have all that confidence whenever it's earned. But if you never feel like you've earned it, maybe that also helps drive this psychotic, need to improve and beat yourself up and say, I can do better. I can do better. Yeah. Maybe at some point it's healthy for that to go away. There's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah. I don't know that. I think it's okay if that never fully goes away. I think that's probably important to have. But I don't have, I don't know. I don't personally have this kind of like, oh, I'm not good enough kind of like, or it doesn't sound good enough kind of mentality. And I hope you don't have that for your films, because they are. But I can understand the concept of the what is it where you don't feel like you are
Dunning-Kruger or imposter syndrome.
Thank you.
The opposite.
I can understand the imposter syndrome kind of thing. Like, Kubrick makes films and Steven Spielberg makes films. I'm not either of them. Can I make a film? I can understand that to a point, but you have this voice and it's very specific and it's only you and nobody else can make the thing that you're making. So I think that you know that and you see that, but in the final edit, when you're watching that, I hope for you that you can put all of that stuff out of your mind and see it for what it is, like whatever it has become kind of thing. I know it's hard.
I hope all of our listeners have a Todd hype man in their life because you need it.
Well, because it didn't exist at one point, or for the entirety of human existence. It didn't exist until you made it, and now it's there. And it's kind of like how, have you ever thought about, of course you have, the arrow of time and how this moment in time has been waiting to happen for the existence of the universe. And now that moment is gone. That it was just there. It was just there. And now it's gone. It's been waiting for billions and billions of years, and now it's gone. That one's gone too. And that one's gone too. And all of those times didn't have what you just said in them, or you just did, or you just made. And now it does. And now the universe has the thing that you just made. And I just think that is like so cool and empowering that you're affecting the universe by everything you do and say and make. And it doesn't matter if other people, or if everybody's going to be dead in a few years, and in 200 years, nobody will remember your name, and the thing you made won't even exist anymore. But for this period in time, it's there, and the universe can enjoy it. I think it's just pretty cool, So
wow, dude,
just go.
Well said. That was really gnarly, man. Damn. Well done. Speaking of things waiting billions of years to eat you from the inside out, what are we covering today, man?
Yes, epic transition right into it. Today we are covering Alien Romulus, which at the time of this recording just came out. If you haven't seen the film, please pause the episode. We're going to ruin a lot of stuff, all the stuff. So yeah, if you haven't seen all the aliens, you should probably pause this for a week, go watch them, and then come back.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about all that stuff. Definitely some story and writing, body horror. We'll talk about Andy, dystopias, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. While scavenging the deep ends of a derelict space station, a group of young space colonists come face to face with the most terrifying life form in the universe. It's directed by Fede Alvarez, written by Fede Alvarez and Rodo Sayagues, cinematography by Galo Olivares. It's featuring Cailee Spaeny as Rain, David Jonsson as Andy, Archie Renaux as Tyler, Isabela Merced as Kay, Spike Fearn as Bjorn, Aileen Wu as Navarro, and Ian Holm as Rook. Spoiler.
Nice. No soundbite. I debated, like, it's mostly screaming and running. So I was like, you know what? It will help set the mood if you're watching, but maybe not as much if you're listening. You're just, what is happening? Yeah. So, dude, Alien has a long history at this point, creating a lot of films. The first original 4, plus the Alien Predator stuff, plus Prometheus, plus whichever one came after Prometheus. And so at this point, there's probably a good, 8 or so of these things. 7 plus 8, Romulus. I don't know. I think of all of those, everyone can agree the first 2, great. I personally really like Alien 3, actually. I revisited that recently, and I think it's a great film, actually. Though opinions differ on that one. So we have a new one. What do you think? Like, does this live up to the originals? How does it fit into the greater Alien universe for you?
Okay, we already gave the spoilers, so we can just talk about it as it comes. So
Game on.
Here's the good for me is the last 20 minutes were amazing. I loved it. I loved the new creature, whatever the heck that was. It looked like a cross between, one of the big guys from Prometheus, and an actual alien with the tail, and just some, I don't know, Akeem Olajuwon. It was incredibly freaky and amazingly creative. I thought it was awesome, and the stress that was happening during it was, for me, was just really, really well done and super creative. So I loved the last 20 minutes of it. Nice. I thought it was terrifying, and I thought the set design was really great. The creature design was great, of this new creature specifically, but also, you know, like they did a lot of practical stuff, and I always love practical over CG, just always, you know, even if I know that's a practical alien and I can tell, I would always rather see that on a screen than know that a computer made this thing. I mean, usually, in this case, because it's so, you know, they did it so well in the first couple ones, you know, that I just, it's almost like nostalgic to see it, you know?
Yeah.
So I loved that. I thought that Cailee Spaeny was great as Ray. I thought she was fantastic. I could always just see the love that she had for her brother. I could see the terror in her face. You know, she gave a lot just through her face. She's a great actor, really great. But the standout for me was David Jonsson. I thought,
damn right, holy crap!
Oh, who is this guy? Yeah. Like, wow. The moment I see him, I love him on the screen. You know, and that's the goal, is for you to love him, so that when he switches and becomes part of, you know, the company, you're brokenhearted. You miss him. You want him back. I want him back, and you can't get him back. But he plays those two roles so flawlessly. I really believe that he's a synthetic, and I really believe that he loves her, and that's his directive. And in the end, where she gives him a new directive, you can see this almost like joy on his face, you know, that he has this new directive that it is almost inclusive of him, and he just loves that, because it's to take care, do the best for what's best for them together. And it's so crazy that he's a synthetic, but it's almost like there's a bit of humanity in there, but not too much.
Yeah.
You know? It's unbelievably difficult to ride that line, and he does it flawlessly. That's about it. That's about it for me. So I'll get to the really bad thing in a second, which I know you're gonna. The moment I saw it, I was like, "Oh, Wes is gonna tear this shit up." Yeah. It felt like everything. We got everything that we wanted. You know, we got the face huggers. We see the alien and all this, and the alien uses his inside mouth to kill somebody. Like, we got all of those things, but it felt almost just like redone, you know, the same thing that we'd seen before. There's not anything really new that happens. Well, the one thing new that was interesting was the heat signature thing that the creatures, the facehuggers have. But that's been done in every movie, every creature movie that you've ever seen, of like, be very quiet and tiptoe by them. And it just didn't really land, because I kind of expected that. And then how they get up, like why they get up to the space station. Oh, there's just this random space station floating around, and they have the only ship that's going to go up there. Come on, you know, like that's the whole impetus of them getting there was not at all what I expected at all. And it was lazy, honestly. I thought the writing was lazy. I thought that the character development was completely lacking. You know, the only thing that we hear is the one guy who's mean to Andy.
Bjorn. Yeah.
The one guy who's mean to Andy. We find out that his mom died because a synthetic made a hard decision, and so that's why he's mean to Andy. But other than that, I don't know anything really about anybody else. and so it's kind of hard. I mean, I don't want them to die, but it's kind of hard to like really care. So the character development isn't there. They did this weird like ramping thing with speed ramping thing with the action sometimes. I think to make the alien feel like it was moving faster than it was, and I hated it. It was like something I would do on my iPhone. I couldn't imagine someone saying, "Hey, I have got an idea and it's a good one and here it is," and so everybody saying, "Yeah, it's a great idea," and then doing that. It was like ugly and gross. The cinematography in times was just too dark. For me, like it was hard to see some things. I need it to be dark. I like dark, but sometimes when you have almost no information in the blacks, it's not scary. If I literally can't see the thing at all, even when I'm supposed to see the thing. So it just felt dark to me. And then, last thing I'll say is the Ian Holm CG thing was brutally terrible and completely ruined the entire. I could let everything else that I just said go and just enjoy a good alien movie without that. But that ruined it. That took the movie from okay, this could be enjoyable to I never want to watch this again because, okay, it just so happens he's laying on the ground. It just so happens that he's synthetic. It just so happens that they can revive him or use his chip. Or using his chip is fine. Like that makes sense. Maybe the chip isn't damaged, but he's in half and it just, and they go back to him all the time. He is the exposition and it's brutal. They do so many close-ups on his face while he's talking and it's not done well. It doesn't look good. It doesn't even line up with the audio. It's unfinished. It's unfinished. And so I understand the idea of like bringing him back, but excuse me, but why do you have to bring him back and make him part of the story? It could just be a replica of him and he never speaks or anything, but we see his face and we're like, oh my God, that was, and revisit that in our minds, but he doesn't have to be the whole exposition. It really took it from a kind of like probably B-level movie to something that I would make in college as like a student film for me of this person hasn't learned how to give proper exposition so that to honor the viewer, like the audience. What they did was just re-give us everything that we've had from the past 7 other alien films in a really shitty way. And I felt walking out like worse than Prometheus. Like I would have loved Prometheus. At least then you had these big, huge, set pieces and you were like kind of in this new world and you didn't know what was coming next. And it was a little bit different, even though it was the same. And I felt more valued as a viewer watching that film than this film. So the saving graces were the acting were Cailee Spaeny and David Jonsson for me, and the last 20 minutes. I'll stop.
Damn. Like I think I mostly agree with everything you're saying. Certainly Ian Holm, for those, because the audience can't see our show note document that I make every week with, all the actors in it. I always put a character's name as whoever, right? And this week I put Ian Holm in quotes, like, because it's, clearly. And I think conceptually, I don't mind it. Now, I think preferentially, I'd still rather not have it. But I checked and was like, how involved was, his family with that kind of thing? And his wife was on board because Ian Holm, died a few years ago. And she didn't love that, he really wasn't doing any work for a while. And for whatever reason, it felt kind of personal to her, and probably therefore felt personal to Ian Holm himself. And so she liked the idea of, giving him one last moment on screen, which is really cool. But it was just, one, it's not actually necessary. it could help the story if Ian Holm was still here and could properly, take his role, maybe do some de-aging or something. But I don't think it really serves the story as well as they needed to. I think you're making a great point about the need for exposition is clearly, kneecapping the film itself. But it's just so poorly done at the end of the day that it can only hurt you. It's only hurting your story. And I think yeah, man, it's not good. There's something so impossible that seems to be the case about teeth. Like whenever I see teeth in the inside of a person's mouth when they're doing this kind of CG work, it never looks good. It always looks off. And I don't know why that is, why, the interior of a mouth is just so impossible to do. Because there were several shots, I don't think there was ever an entire scene, but there were several shots that his face looked pretty good. And I was like, damn, that's really nice work. And then immediately they cut to, a wide or a close up. It's all over the place. Just like, oh, here we are again. And it just pulls you out of the story, which is supposed to be the goal, right? The goal is to pull you deeper into the story, not push you away. If we're floating in space, holding a plasma rifle, every time Ian Holm comes on board, like we're firing away like rain and just completely leaving the scene. It's just it's wrecking the experience.
Like make him the computer.
Yeah.
You tap him into the computer. You don't have to have him physically speaking. You just hear him. I don't need to see his face all the time. Like they cut back to him like 20 times so he could talk to you as a viewer. I'm like, what are you doing? Why?
Damn, you just fixed it, bro. Like literally, his mouth should have never moved. And then, he becomes part of the PA system. And it's just him talking to us.
Like Hal,
Yeah. Which isn't even better.
Right. And then you can say, oh, it's an homage to 2001, and
it continues because there is a conversation about artificial intelligence that's happening in the film, and then making that extra link I think would also help further that conversation without distracting from that visual element, because that is a huge distraction. So completely agree. Great point about the exposition that I didn't really consider. I was just so punched in the face through that I couldn't think straight. A little punch drunk. But yeah, I was on the fence because those last 20 minutes, they're doing some really cool stuff. And they walked the line. They walked a really nice line of the hybrid, right? The human alien hybrid, because that's clearly a callback. And I think this whole movie is a bit of a love letter to those original first 4 Alien films, where it's just, we're going to take bits and pieces from all of it, especially the first Alien, is heavily inserted into here, not just because that's also the impetus for the story, is the fact that they find that original alien floating through space, which was a bit tough for me to buy into for a number of reasons. One, finding anything floating around out in space that doesn't have a beacon seems impossible. That's a really hard sell. Let alone them thinking there's any reason to go and even look for it in the first place. I don't know, maybe because I think this takes place before Aliens. This is in between Alien and Aliens. And so they hadn't found Ridley yet, and therefore hadn't really gotten the full debriefing, because she makes that whole ending Nostromo message at the end of the film, like, this is what happened, I'm the last survivor. But I don't think that message ever gets found because they never find her. Therefore, ergo, hence, I don't think they should be able to be looking for the alien first. But you know what? You can, fine. You know what? Maybe not the end of the world. Things happen, and nor do they give us a story. Cool, fine. So that's an homage, to the original Alien and utilizing, the pieces of the buffalo. And then you get to Alien 4, which is playing in the same realm, and that's fairly universally hated. I know there are some people who actually love Resurrection. I'm certainly not one of those people. I watched it in theater and was beside myself. Like, even as a kid, this just wasn't going to work. I think he said there's a way to do that, that plays better. And this does play way better. Like, it walks the really fine line of being silly without fully going silly. And that's a dance, man, because it took me out for, a scene, and I was like, okay, I'm here. And the horror set right back in. And so kudos, because I would never advise anyone to play in that sandbox. But he does, and he does it pretty effectively, actually. And the other elements that you're talking about, I agree. I knew exactly what was going to happen. Tiptoeing through the facehugger, sanctuary, definitely. Exactly what's going to go down, and that does steal a lot of the punch. Whereas before, up until that moment, I loved the facehugger chase. That whole sequence was really cool. We hadn't seen that before. Like, we'd seen some issues with facehuggers, like in Aliens, right? When they get trapped in the room. This said, you know what? We're going to go from Alien to Aliens. We're going to say one was cool, 50's better. And just when you think, oh, but they got out of the room, and now you can see them breaking through, and it just keeps you on the edge. Like, they were doing, Fede was doing some really cool stuff with that, and just kind of propelling the action forward and making you feel not safe all the way through. Like, all the body horror stuff, very effective. I don't know how much I loved it, but that's more of a Wes issue than, because it was still getting to me. Like, and that's where I think he's also still laying very heavily into the original Alien, which was all about the body horror, and taking, and we discussed this a lot in our first podcast with Alien, that first episode, because it was clearly taking the idea of rape and using it as a way to get inside a horror film, without ever actually making the film about sexual assault. And so that's a really, like, crazy avenue to take. And then what was really cool about Alien was that it was used against men. And so whenever they go down and they had that first face hugger, jump out of the egg and assault a guy, that's a really nice, effective way to put men on their heels, right? And suddenly we're being faced with this reality that we don't really ever have to think about too much. And so you have that. And here they're reversing it. And now, everyone's a victim at this point in this film, right? You have that first facehugger who starts wrapping around Tyler, and they really go all out with the penile reference there, because that thing could not look more like a penis. Like, it was just trying to get into his throat, and it's just him fighting, and it's so gross and it's so repulsive, and therefore so effective. Like, I was just crawling in my seat, and then they keep pushing that kind of concept throughout the rest of the film, right? The alien birthing from the cocoon, right, which is very womb-like, and
very
before, of course, you have Bjorn, who's trying to kill it, right? It becomes this kind of use of abortion. I'm sure there's maybe a better poetic way of saying that, but apparently all my poetry's left me for the episode. And so, he's in there, he's trying to abort this thing, and it attacks him, right? Kills him, trips all the acid right on top of him, which I'll come back to here in a second. But then it bursting from, the cocoon, very birth-like, right? Human birth-like. And it's playing on that image, and it's making you as uncomfortable as it possibly can. It's just fun to make you crawl in your seat, basically. Because I don't think ultimately there's a bigger story that is talking about right to life. There's no strong through line that I can walk away from. Because you have that element of him trying to kill it in the womb, and then it comes out anyway. But the other victim of this is Kay, right? Who we find out towards the beginning of the film that she's pregnant, which is about as much character development as any of those characters get. She's pregnant, and what's kind of messed up is they don't even give you a father to latch onto. I think it would have made sense to make Tyler the dad, so that whenever they're about to sacrifice her outside of the door, he's got even more animosity towards Andy, because that's his wife. And now he's finding out, or not his wife, but his girlfriend. And now he's finding out that she's pregnant on top of that. That would send him into, but maybe they felt, I'm sure that was a conversation. There's no way they get through this without having a full conversation about who's the dad. Could it be Bjorn instead of brother? It's her lover, or it could be Tyler. But then Tyler is gonna try to kill Andy. Maybe that's too far. You can't push him that far, and so it's just better to make him quote unquote some asshole. Cool, but regardless, she wanted that baby, and therefore I don't think there's a very strong life conversation, or at least not an obvious one. I'm sure there's ways that you can extrapolate and create your own kind of narrative, thoughtful narrative, I'm sure. But I don't see there being, a really obvious conversation when it comes to whether it's assault, whether it's abortion, that lines up. Instead, I just took it more at face value of, this is a path towards horror that we can use this iconography or imagery that's embedded in our DNA and punch us in the face with it. And that's what the original Alien did. It wasn't having a conversation either. It was just like, oh, here's an interesting way to do all this stuff that's going to make the audience hate us. Cool, let's do that. Let's go all the way in. And so, I really appreciate, all the body horror stuff, because it really worked. And I really hated it. Especially that thing, jumping into Tyler. It was just very penile, not very demure. So, but the pregnant girl, that's nice because it's building the hope and a vision of the future on Ivaga, which also creates tension for us, right? Because that's based on, us knowing what movie she's in, because we're like, oh, here we go. There's a pregnant girl. We really don't want to see that happen to her. And so anyway, Bjorn doing the acid thing, that one's kind of tough because he just falls down right directly underneath the acid. That's one of those, is that a good decision? This guy is just going to hang out where the acid is falling all over him. I don't know, maybe this is where it hurts, because I begin to make excuses for why that's okay in the story. It's like, oh, well, maybe his brain, just was so in pain that he's not thinking clearly. It's like, I shouldn't need to think that, there should be some mechanism within the story that helps sell why he's doing that. There was a shot earlier, not long before that, where Navarro, the pilot, kicks the thruster and launches everyone. That felt very intentional. It didn't feel like this is an accident and she's flailing about. It felt like, oh, I need to kick the steering wheel or whatever it's called. And it was just like, there's probably a better way to shoot that so that I don't feel pulled out of the story. Does she mean to do that? And
it just happens to go inside the station. That was the first thing I thought. I mean, I could have gotten away with because she's she's got the thing about to burst out of her, so she's just
dealing
kicking.
with stuff. Yeah.
So it's an accident, but for it to like go around the station and then to crash into the bay.
Yeah.
I'm like, how does that happen?
I think there was even yes, agreed. But I think direction wise, like I would have had her, instead of just kick out, like stretch up. Like it's her needing space. And so just having her arch her whole body kind of sells the need for the leg extension.
Right.
But there's just some things that I'm like, a little tweak here, or just do it in a separate shot. Like maybe don't tie it into one single shot, which is usually best. That's how you make things believable, and keep everything nice and tight and motivated. But if the shot's not working, like whatever, do a pickup and turn it around, and we'll not be distracted. That was a big distraction for me, which is a weird thing to get distracted by. And I suspect probably not the only one. Anyway, so watching Bjorn get destroyed with acid is really nice. It's a friendly reminder of how that acid works. Like they were describing it, but for those who are new, maybe haven't watched 40-year-old movies, like, oh, that acid, really bad for the environment. And it starts eating through things. Cool. Then we can understand that when we're on the bottom level and Andy starts passing out guns, and he says, don't shoot. We're on the bottom level. If you shoot the aliens, the acid's going to eat through the floor and decompress the entire space and kill us all. It's like, oh, okay. Safety note, guys. Don't shoot the aliens. And that's really good, right? Because that acid danger of decompression at the end motivates her to turn off the gravity, gives her a chance to look smart, and then shoot everything, and then gives you a nice danger to float through, all of which is giving her another opportunity to look smart. Like, oh, I'm about to float right into, and it's so good because so often in space movies, I don't know, maybe not so often, but it becomes too easy to navigate within space, right? Once you're not tethered to anything, you can no longer move. Like you're going to keep going whatever direction you're going to go. You can't just like make yourself move. And so I love that she felt trapped and helpless because she couldn't grip or touch anything, which gave her a moment of, oh, I'll use my gun, the percussive force to move me. Cool. Great. Gives her another opportunity to look smart. And then another one, whenever she's dealing with the hybrid alien, and she can't flip the last switch. And so she's like, oh, the alien had all that acid in its birthing tube or whatever, the egg. She kicks that over, decompresses the whole thing. That loaded gun aspect goes off, right? Where we understand if acid gets into the floor, eats through, decompresses the room, that's not good. Oh, it's good now because it can serve me. And so that's a really lovely way to satisfy the need to see this gun go off. Metaphorically.
And it's an homage to the first one.
Yes, the decompression.
And I love the fourth act that Alien does. I will say that this whole, okay, we're okay, everything's good, No, my God, everything's not for about 10 minutes, and now everything is terrible. Yeah, I love that. And they did a great job of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, and I'll talk about Andy here in a second, I guess. But dude, the production design on this thing is easily the best since the first Alien. And because the technology is just so much better now, it may technically look better. I'm still going to prefer the first Alien because it's just in my DNA. But this thing deserves some awards. Whoever did the production design on this absolutely nailed it. It's just so gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful films the last several years, maybe since Prometheus. Like it's just all the set design, all the visual effects, even the exteriors of the ship, of the Romulus, beautiful. Like it's everything is just top notch, except Rook is just so good. And it's just unbelievably like gorgeous to look at. And so I watched this twice and I really didn't mind. I could probably watch this. Like I watch Prometheus, occasionally just because it's so good to look at. And same with this, like it's just beautiful. Now this is way more watchable than Prometheus by my calculation. Because I think for one, I buy into everyone, specifically Rain and Andy, like Cailee and David Jonsson. Their chemistry is just unreal. They're so freaking good together. And David Jonsson has just been catapulted, into A-list. There's no way we don't see him in a dozen films over the next 5 years. Like he is just unbelievably good. And if I could get both of them in a film together, all the better. I would love to see them just take on a normal drama. That would be unbelievable. And Cailee's got really strangely into genre films. Like I wouldn't imagine her being a genre actor, and yet, she's doing a lot of sci-fi and now horror. So keep it going. Like she adds a lot of weight to whatever she's doing, and so keep that bus running. But David Jonsson creates such strong characters that whenever the movie starts, I don't see it coming. Normally, when you see a very, very weak character, it just alarm goes off in my head like, oh, they'll be a badass by the end of this movie. And yet, because of the writing, I want to be clear on that. The writing really served David Jonsson very well here because I don't see that arc coming from an android. I just kind of assumed an android's always going to be what he's going to be. Like who he is who he is. And Andy is just going to be this very demure kind of character, and he's just this weak. He's very meek, and he's getting wailed on in the opening, and he's going into a seizure, and Rain has to fix him. And David Jonsson just does such an incredible job of drawing that strong line in the sand of Andy before and Andy after the upgrade. And the writing is so good because they establish early on that she has access to his programming and can tweak that and fix them. And then whenever that's introduced later in the film, when we run into the science officer, Rook, she pulls his programming out and gives it to him. It's like, oh, of course. Now, and then again, the writing is serving very well because he then makes a comment that my knowledge database hasn't changed. He's like, I don't know what that thing is or how to, kill it. My knowledge database hasn't changed, but I do sense, but the AI upgrade is impacting my system. I can feel it healing and it's just, that's a really strong, seamless bit of exposition that tells you so much without feeling like you're being exposited to, because it's just necessary information for those characters. They need to hear this. Rain needs to hear, I don't have new information to give you, but I am changing right now, and it's for the better, or at least so we think. And that's the other element that I think is a really strong piece of writing, which is whenever she's asking, why is Bjorn being such a jerk to Andy? She's like, synthetics can't harm humans. And I think it's Navarro that's like, they can sacrifice 3 to save 3 dozen. That they can do. And so that's a really beautiful setup for tension when Andy then goes on to get his personality upgrade, because we're aware that they're able to, do these trolley problem calculations in their head. And we don't know who he's serving anymore, because then he gets his new directive. And I love that. I love all that aspect of updating Andy's AI, giving him a personality shift, which sets us back on our heels, combined with David Jonsson's acting ability. It's selling all of it. And so now he's got a new directive from doing what's best for Rain to completing the mission and doing what's best for the company, which is really nice. And I think it's also taken a really smart through line, once again, paying, homage to the first several Alien films, continuing this Weyland-Yutani insane desire to keep trying to study and bend nature to its will for corporate greed. That's playing right part and parcel with all of that, even though if there were a human on board that survived from that original Romulus team, they're going to override all that. They're going to be like, no, we're good. We're done studying now. But these are AI. And I think this is making a very subtle case that the problem doesn't lie in the AI. And instead it lies in the programming and the directive given to it by its maker or its owner. And therefore, like, them wanting to continue the mission, right? Rook trying to say, we're doing what's best for the company, it's myopic because that's what's in its programming. It doesn't have the ability to see the bigger picture of actually what's best for the company is to stop doing this because it got everyone in the company killed. It's not able to make those kind of value judgments because it doesn't have what we have, which is, ingrained empathy. Instead, it can only do what it's programmed to do. And so I think it's touching on all of those elements without being preachy or being overt. Instead, it's just kind of there to aid the story along. And I think it serves it pretty faithfully, actually. I don't think they ever crossed the line of giving Andy or Rook added programming that isn't automatically built into the story. And that's a fine line to walk, and that's a really good job on Fede and Rodo's part, for sure.
I also because you brought it up, I also like the gravity aspect too, because so many films like this, the gravity is artificial, like because it's spinning. You can't turn that off, right? But in this case, it's not. I mean, it is artificial, but it's like man-made, instead of centrifugal. So you can turn it off, and so because of that, and they established that early on when they first get in the ship, I kind of expected that. Okay, this is going to be a tool at some point. That is going to be used, and they use it in a really cool way. The coolest shot for me in the entire film is when she's floating towards the acid, like that you brought up earlier. Part of me, so what I remember from old alien films is, or just, what did you call it? Body horror films? Films? Is brutality. Like just unforgiving, and it might be because I was young and everything was like a big deal, but just this unforgiving nature of whatever's going to happen is going to happen full on, and you're going to watch it. And so when I saw the trailer and I saw that shot in the trailer, I thought, I want to see this movie because I want to see that person get ripped apart by the acid. And so when I saw that it was her, I was like, how's she going to get out of this? And I thought it was super smart how they got her out of it. But I really wished it would have been somebody else who we knew was going to die, and that's how they died. Like, instead of what's his name dying by laying under the egg, like you said, I thought that was just a missed opportunity to use the acid in a much more creative way, like the shot that I thought was so cool. But that being the case, you still could have used that, the whole gun scenario for her to get away from something, like maybe in the elevator or something like that. So I thought it was really smart, but that moment felt like a really great, brutal moment that the alien could still win even after having died, which is, again, another homage to the fourth act of the first one and the second one and whatever, but yeah, I thought that scene was like really super cool.
Very, very cool. The other stuff that kind of jumped out to me, this is obviously dystopian as hell. And I think that's the final homage to Alien 3, because we never, right, they're stuck on a prison planet. And so effectively that's them. All these characters are stuck on a prison planet. You never see the sun, you just work. Oh, your contract is up. No, back to work. And like, whatever. Like that was a bit of a hard sell for me, to be honest. But at least they have a motivation, right? They need the cryo sleep cells to leave and immigrate to the perfect planet, Ivaga. Okay. Like, again, kind of a hard sell, but just enough to kind of get us off the planet. Like, I'm with you. I didn't really understand how they had access to this crazy ship. I guess you need those things to make your drop off to, and again, I think this is us making excuses for why the story is okay. Like, you're building out stuff that they weren't really giving you in the first place. But
and that to me is one of the biggest problems. Like, I have no problem with paying homage to the other Alien movies.
Yeah.
But if that's your goal and that's what you want to do, recall 1, 2, and 3 and all that stuff and everything, you still need to have your own tone in your film. And I felt like it was more about making sure that all of those things that you remember happening in those other films, you still see, and paying homage instead of like giving this one its own tone. It just didn't feel, the tone I felt came from the acting. And yes, there are some great writing moments. I totally agree with you. And they put them in really great scenarios. And I thought that it looked really great. And I already called that out, but I just didn't know what this was. I think you put it perfectly. I'm sitting there making excuses for why things are happening the way that they are, rather than it just being and it just happening, and me not having to say, oh, that could have happened because I don't like that. That takes me out, and it's really hard for me to get back in when that's the case, because I'm in my own head now, painting a picture of why something is happening, rather than, oh, maybe, dialogue is one thing. I can get past dialogue because it's like, okay, well, he said that, maybe in some world somebody would say something like that. Okay, fine, but for something to happen, like her kicking the stick in the ship and the ship flying into the space station, no effing way. Like, I don't believe that would happen in any world. Or him getting hit and laying under the thing and him seeing that he's disintegrating but not moving. Like, there's no world in where I would sit there and think, okay, I kind of can see. And so it doesn't feel like its own statement to me. I would rather watch Prometheus than this. And say what you will, but because, I mean, I thought this looked great, but there were just too many questions of, why are they the only ones there? Why is the station just hanging out there? I did like the metaphorical ticking clock that they had, of it coming closer to the rings. And I loved that we get to see how the rings are disintegrating the ship and just, like tearing it apart. I thought that was super cool and beautiful that you get to see rings close up. When could you see, rings on a planet close up? And you get to see that some of them are giant boulders of ice and some of them are tiny little specks. And I thought it was so well done. So there are some really, really wonderful moments too. So I don't want to like totally shit on it. So
yeah, no, but I agree. Like, there's a moment, there's two moments and fairly early on in the film where I was like, okay, I don't know about that. So the first one worked really well, which was, who is it? Bjorn is making fun of Andy and kind of threatening him. And Andy grabs him and pulls him and he gets afraid. And he's like, there's a hole in the floor. And he turns around and he's like, oh, whoa. Like, that was a really beautiful, effective moment.
Great point.
Not long after that, they activate Rook, and he talks about, the xenomorph, and kind of points to the ceiling where there's a massive giant alien hanging from the ceiling. And I was like, hold on. They walked into this room and just didn't look at anything? Like, you can get away with one. Cool. That's a nice reveal. You can't get away with two. Like, come on. That thing it's backlit, like it's begging to be looked at. And you're just going to tell me that they didn't look up at this? That broke my brain. I was like, what is going on? You can get away with one, not two. Like, you pushed it too far. Stop. Yeah. And still another thing that took me out, which was supposed to be, I think, a nice moment, or comedic, I guess, was when Andy like takes out the alien that's about to kill Rain, shoots it and says, "Get away from her, you bitch." Like, too much. That's too far. There's no reason for him to say that. That's so unmotivated. It's outrageous. Like, it's clearly just you trying to call out and do fan service, which was ultimately, I think, a disservice because you're pulling me out of your film.
You're giving that line to the wrong person.
Wrong person. Like, there's just no reason.
It's not a person. Like, it's like he would never say that.
Ever.
Doesn't make sense.
At all.
And I love that you called out that shot, man. I forgot about that, where he saves, what's his name that you said?
Bjorn.
Yeah, Andy saves Bjorn. Bjorn has been, messing with him. And when that happened, it reminds you that Andy's directive, or like he is not a normal person who would just maybe almost be okay if this guy fell down the hole because he just picks on him. No, he is a machine and doesn't have emotion, right? He's not bitter towards him, because it's really hard to remember that because he's such a good actor and he plays this part really well. And then when he saves, then that reminds us, the acid. Oh my gosh, because we haven't seen any effects of it yet.
Yeah.
And so that reminds us about the acid and reminds us about what this creature is capable of if you hurt it. And he saves this guy. So it's very motivated, that whole scenario.
Yeah.
And when they walk in the room, it's a big room. So of course, when you're far away from the door that you're trying to walk through, when you walk into the room, so you're going to see the whole room. That includes up and down. Our vision isn't flat. It's not like we can not have peripheral vision upward as well. So, yeah.
That was kind of rough. The opening, I felt, I don't know. I thought the sound design was kind of needlessly aggressive in the opening. It felt very. And I will say, I don't think they did too many jump scares. There were definitely a handful, especially the very end when the thing you think it's dead and it's still not dead, because you think it's been sucked into space and it's, still alive. I don't know. The sound design in the opening just felt very punchy, and we're trying to, I don't know, not scare you necessarily, but put you on your edge. And I don't know, it felt false. I felt like I was just being assaulted instead of let's just let this unfold and see and tell a little bit of a story here. And I don't think it's a very strong visual story. I think there's still a little confusion, which is probably fine because it gets explained very clearly later on by Rook. But I was a little confused about what I was looking at on that final frame. My first time through. The second time through, I understood very clearly what happened. So maybe that's a fault of the viewer.
What happened?
They bring in I'm really not sure how the original xenomorph got stuck into a rock. And then therefore they go and find it and pull it in and cut it out. And so what we're looking at the very end of that opening sequence is the impression of
fossil.
The fossilized impression of the inside the rock, right? And they're cueing the music to let you know this is not good. Look what they did. And then of course they later spell out that this is the exact same xenomorph, and they even show the spear, sticking out of its back from when Ripley. I said Ridley earlier. Ripley, had shot it with the spear gun. And so they're kind of connecting all those dots very slowly. Yeah. Is that kind of the same?
Yeah. No, that's what I got too.
I guess. I think the one little cool thing, it's very light touch, but I loved it, was whenever Rook is talking about Wayland and his whole Promethean journey, they insert very quickly a music insert from Prometheus. Like the score from Prometheus gets very lightly inserted. And if you're familiar with the score, it'll jump out to you. For me, I was just like, oh, that was nice. It was very seamless. And I don't know, I like little flourishes like that.
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's great.
Very nice. I think that's about all that I have for this. Overall, I had a nice time, I will say. I certainly didn't love it. The visuals were so beautiful. The performances were so strong that it gave me a lot to enjoy and maybe even come back and revisit. I think there was more. I like that we can kind of renew all these beats that we've experienced in other films. And by virtue of creating new characters with new motives, you can make it fresh again. I think that's always been a frustration of mine with sequels, is that you're never really turning new ground up. Instead, you're just revisiting the same beats for the sake of making more money. And here, I thought he found a lovely way to get into it, even if not perfectly well executed. Just the nature of, okay, these characters have a need, and that's going to drive them to do stupid things and put them into the situation that gives birth to the movie. Fine, that's really nice, and then starts to derive new emotional beats, right? The fact that she loves and cares about Andy because that's kind of the last vestiges of her family that's now gone, and therefore also gives her a reason to not like Weyland-Yutani. Like, there's a lot of nice built-in stuff that I don't think was maximized, but still gave me enough reason to care about all these characters, or at least care about Rain and Andy. I cared about Kay because she was pregnant, and she's cute, and that was kind of the extent of that. I didn't care that much about Navarro. I wanted to. They just didn't give me any reason to, beyond she's cute. Same thing with Tyler and Bjorn. Yeah, they're good look. I actually didn't like Bjorn. Something about that dude, I think it's the bowl cut. Like, you need a different haircut. There was something I was like, yeah, you can die. And maybe because he was also being a dick to Andy the whole time. Tyler I cared about. He seemed like a really good dude. Everyone in here basically is a model, so that gives you a little bit of reason to root for him. And then Tyler trying to look out for Rain, was very endearing, and he was trying to look out for everyone, and that was cool. He was never trying to be mean to Andy. He was always trying to look out for Andy, and so that gave me a lot of emotional connection with Tyler, and that's nice. But ultimately, I think maybe there's some rewriting or some other avenue to get all these characters into the situation that also gives you more backstory. Maybe that also makes it feel not as forced. I don't know. Maybe that's adding on another 10 minutes at the beginning that you don't want to burn before you get to. But a lot of the good horror movies take those extra 10, 20 minutes, to get you into the world. Alien does. It
takes its time.
And yeah, there's so much to get to throughout the rest of this movie that maybe there's some sequences that you could probably cut. Yeah, a little less action, but a little more emotional investment makes the rest of the action sequences that much more, taut. I don't know.
Do you think that what I'm about to say is because I'm old, or do you think that what I'm about to say has any merit? I felt like they were all too young. I felt like for what they know and what they're able to do, flying up into space in this ship, docking, like they're all like early 20s. I just don't buy it even in that world.
Yeah.
Am I old?
No, I think I had that, maybe it's both, we're old, but I think it's more of that extra other version of the opening, because I start to build out in my head, well, yeah, if they grew up and they're working and she's put in 12 years and she's 24, she's been working since she was like 12 or whatever it was, 12,000 hours, like, she's been working since she was 15, 16, probably before then. And so I can build that out, but I never felt justified fully in just assuming all that. And that's kind of what you need. You need your audience to assume that they know what they're doing because of the planet that they grew up on and being kind of these serfs, because this takes a really interesting perspective as far as dystopians go, and revisiting kind of a feudal area where these are all serfs working in a serfdom, and therefore they grew up maybe not highly educated, but highly specifically taught how to do specific jobs, because that's the and so I think you're justified in that, and some other version of the opening gives us all that information seamlessly in a way that you're like, yeah, this is of course what they've been doing. And maybe that's adding in like a 10-year-old, like that they're leaving behind, or something that's like,
oh, that's a great, yes.
Then suddenly you can see like, oh, everyone grows up on this planet working. And then it's just like, okay, they've been doing this since they were 10. Of course they know all this stuff. Yeah.
That's, oh man, that would have been so nice. And also it would have been really nice to like see her working and dirty and exhausted. We don't really see that. We just see her ready to leave, you know? I think you're right. There could have been plenty of things, or a couple of just small things that wouldn't have taken a lot of time, that would have shown to us that these are old souls, you know? These 24-year-olds are like 50 years old, you know, because of what they've been through and what they've done and everything, or had to go through. So yeah, I would say imperfect at best is how I felt in this movie. I had just under executed in so many ways for me, and it sucks. I want another good Alien movie, and it's really hard to get it, and I don't know why. I feel like this could be done. I feel like what you need is a good amount of money for a really good Alien movie. Honestly, because I there have been different directors for these films, and I feel like you need somebody who can do it. I don't know. I honestly don't have an answer for it, but I haven't had a good Alien movie in a really long time, and it hurts.
It does hurt. I think you really just need a whole new, like Alien did a good job of, a whole new approach, right? Alien to Aliens, horror to action, was a great avenue, but even within Aliens, you're still able to explore new ideas, and flesh out that whole world and universe. And Prometheus was the next best opportunity. They just completely botched the entire idea, without having anything to say. And I think that lack of anything to say permeated throughout the entire film, with having characters make the dumbest decisions in the world. And this film, I thought, had something to say without really figuring out exactly how they wanted to say it. And that began to permeate the rest of all the character decisions and the way everyone dies. Because I thought they're utilizing all the deaths to communicate things to the audience and to build out the world. But the lack of emotional connection really made all those deaths not hurt, you know. And when you get to the end of the film, there's all these things happening that you're not emotionally connected to. And that reveals itself without having a very strong thematic element. And so whoever takes on another Alien, I would run screaming from it personally. But you need to figure out what is it you're trying to say, and how can this experience going through this movie help you say it? Because this is at the end of the day, this became nothing but a thrill ride, which is fine. Like, it definitely delivered some thrills, but you walk away and it's kind of, a hollow experience. You don't take anything with you, which is what all the current great horror films resonate. Like, if you want to talk about Hereditary, if you want to talk about The Witch, like, these are movies that are going to stay with you, because there's conversations happening within these stories, that are going to keep resonating. There's some universal truth that is just punched in the face, very, very well, that is just not being delivered. And I think Alien, especially if you go back to the Promethean, aspect, could deliver some really interesting philosophical stakes. And this one had it. It was close, but just execution. Yeah. I don't envy whoever takes on the next one. And I think this is as close as we're getting to a good one. It's, to me, it's the closest I've gotten, to something that made me happy. But ultimately I was just like, okay, I'm good.
I'm actually going to take back what I said. I don't think you need to throw money at it. I think because of what you said, I actually think that you would do a great one.
Because I'm scared to death of it.
Yes. Think about it. If you're scared to death about it, that means you care. And that means you're looking at all the avenues and all like the different angles and not physically, metaphorically, of like, not just what am I shooting, what's on the screen, what's not on the screen, and what do I feel that's not on the screen. And that was why Alien was so good, because it was not about what was on the screen. You almost never see the xenomorph. It's not about that, and because of that, it stays with you. And you know that. And so I think if you were to be tagged to do the next Alien movie, it would be very different. I think it would be very different, and it would be very interesting. Like, I'm not saying it would be good, because it'd be very hard, to your point, to make a good Alien movie, but it would be interesting, and just people would walk away with something to talk about. And that in itself might be what makes it great. You know what I mean? I think because of this conversation, even, it's just crazy. It's hard to imagine that somebody who made this movie wasn't sitting down at a table with very smart people asking these same questions, saying all this stuff. And I know it's easy in hindsight after we see the movie and it's done to say all of these things. But I just really feel like you as a director, you need to see it in your head. And if it's not what you're seeing on the viewfinder, then it's not right. And you got to make a change. And, I know, a lot of stuff happens because of budgets and stuff, and you only have a certain amount of money and you're eating through it and everything. I get it. But I just feel like so many things were missed in this film that had nothing to do with money.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. And I like Fede. Like, I really enjoyed his take on Evil Dead. Like, he did a nice reboot with Jane Levy a while back, and I thought that was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm pretty sure our buddy David Blue got to work with him when making Texas Chainsaw. Cool. And so I'm sure he has a lot of great things to say. I haven't talked to him about it or anything, but he seems like he's so focused on the thrill, the audience experience. If you're here for a horror, make it horror. And look, you're never going to disappoint the masses going that way. But I think if you start taking more seriously the story elements, the philosophical stakes, and putting more emphasis on that, you'll make everyone happy. And the common audience will enjoy it that much more. And they won't necessarily put their finger on why, but they'll walk out, with that Raiders feeling like, oh my God, I can't believe this. What we just experienced, I don't know. It's fun to see other people take swings. I'll say that, and whatever they got going on next. I'm buying a ticket. That's just what I do. Nice. Yeah. Well, what are you going to recommend this week, man?
This week I'm recommending kind of an older film from 1988, another, I guess, scary film, whatever. I'm going to recommend The Vanishing, which I haven't seen in a very long time, but I remember being really, really good. And I heard, I think I saw recently, maybe it was like a year ago or something, when it came out, Kubrick saw it like a bunch of times. He saw it like 10 times, and he sent a letter to the director, which I forgot who directed it, but he said it's the scariest film he'd ever seen. Kubrick said that, which I saw that, I don't know, I saw that comment about a year ago, and I can't corroborate it in any capacity at all, but I just remember that film really staying with me. So yeah.
Wow.
Vanishing.
Nice. I am going to, if you want more David Jonsson in your life, I'm going to recommend, there's a new season of Industry, season 3 on HBO of Industry. I just love this show so much. And David Jonsson is in it. And so go enjoy that. Yeah. And so it's a show about, I don't know what they call it. Wall Street in London, whatever their version of Wall Street is, K Street or something. Yeah, I don't know. I love it. It's nothing but sex and nerds talking banking regulations or something. Like I don't know, but it's all the actors are incredible.
Riveting.
Like, yeah, just the best performances. They really dug up a lot of great talent on that show, and so I highly recommend it. And they just started the season 3, so go support it. Yeah, stay tuned for next week. We start going back into the world of Tim Burton and starting with Beetlejuice. So yeah, whenever that was from, like 88 probably as well. Something like that. So yeah, go check that out. I'm sure it's streaming on some network or another. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, subscribe, drop us a review, leave us a note, something you want us to cover. And if you want to comment on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/Aileen Romulus.
And our quote of the day is from Philip K. Dick. Science fiction writers, I'm sorry to say, really do not know anything. We can't talk about science because our knowledge of it is limited and unofficial, and usually our fiction is dreadful. Whoa.
Coming from Philip K. Dick, that's really funny, like, because obviously he's one of the best, science fiction writers ever. And the connection here, for those who don't know, like Weyland Yutani is combining elements from the Blade Runner universe with Alien. And Philip K. Dick wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is what Blade Runner was based on. So 6 degrees of separation there. So yeah, I think that's really funny because science fiction writers often make really dumb science in their science fiction. But that's because good science fiction is about not the technology, but about humanity and what you can communicate about humanity through the use of building this science fiction world. And so whenever he was writing about artificial intelligence, it's about not androids, right? It's about what does it mean to be a human? What does it mean to be sentient? And so you're asking these really interesting philosophical questions through the use of science fiction. And that usually leads to really corny bunk sci-fi. Not always. I mean, Star Trek is a great example of that. But sometimes. And I just thought that was a really funny thing for him to just kind of say, hey, don't shoot me, man. I'm just a terrible writer.
That's awesome. Great quote. And I think it's very poignant for today's episode also. Yeah. So, good find there. Well, this is awesome. I love having conversations when we can get really down and dirty about stuff like this, and I think this is a good movie to do that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Please make sure to subscribe, review us wherever you get your podcasts, or listen or watch or anything like that, and share us with a friend. And it all helps a lot. And if there's a film that you'd like to see us pick apart or talk about or whatever, please recommend it. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll do it. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.